briefly, this is our program for today. So to begin with, my name is Philomena from the Clean Cooking Association of Kenya. I'm from the programs department. So I will briefly talk about CCAK. The Clean Cooking Association of Kenya, we are a business membership professional organization. We have members or representatives from government, academia, private sector, donor agencies, NGOs, individuals, and students as well. We are considered as the sector association that represents the interests of our members, especially those engaged in providing clean and efficient cooking solutions in Kenya. We are also the focal point for clean cooking and the sector point of liaison with the national government and the county government and other key national organs. So we were established in 2012, and we started operating officially in 2013, 2014. So like any other organization, we have a mission, of course, which is universal access and adoption to clean and efficient cooking solutions and practices in Kenya. We try to create a sustainable market environment for these practices. So in our scope of work, like any other organization, we have strategic areas that we work with. We focus on advocating. We focus on advocating for an environment, and as we focus on advocating for an enabling environment, we have thematic areas that we work with, and these are divided into 3 strategic pillars. So the first pillar that we work with, is representation and advocacy. This covers how best CCAK can improve its positioning in the sector to better advocate for varied clean cooking interests. With this, I make reference to lobbying for clean and improved fuels and technologies with regards to import duty, VAT, and also national documents that are developed for the sector. We also have a pillar on knowledge and knowledge and information management, which underlies the need for CCAK to provide information about the sector to the clean cooking stakeholders. Also, as a membership organization, we exist to also serve our members who are in the clean cooking sector. We try to create a clearer value proposition for our members and improve their engagement based on their needs. For this, we've been able to divide our members into different subsectors. We have those doing ethanol, electric cooking, briquettes, pellets, improved cook stoves, biogas, and among others. So another thematic area that we work with is standards and technical issues. The clean cooking sector is a bit technical, and we try to focus on ensuring that standards for clean cooking solutions and other technical issues, including standards, are developed for the sector, and we try to see as much as we can, taking our members through the importance of the standards that are developed for the sector, as well as regulatory frameworks and guidelines developed in partnership with other agencies. And lastly, we have institutional strengthening and resourcing. This ensures corporate governance at CCAK, as well as financial sustainability. So under the MEX program, the Modern Energy Cooking Services program, we have the project aims to create a bridge between Kenya's electricity access and clean cooking sectors in order to foster the growth of emerging electric cooking sector that is forming part of an intersection, because electric cooking is the new trend in the market, and we like the way it's picking up, and we have some individuals now using electric cooking. And now, to be able to carry these conversations forward, we formed a group called a community of practice, which is just individuals that have been brought together who have interests in the clean cooking sector. We have researchers, we have manufacturers, suppliers, users, consumers, and all. So this is a forum for intersectoral dialogue, and it acts as a vehicle for convening key sector stakeholders with regard to electric cooking. So partners that we work with in this convening include Kenya Power, KPLC, the Modern Energy Cooking Services in Kenya team, the ACTS team, Africa Center for Technological Studies, and also CCAK is the main convener. So under this project, we have different activities that we've been able to undertake. We've been able to hold electric cooking dialogues since the inception of this community of practice. We've held virtual meetings to discuss issues to do with clean cooking, especially sometimes we make reference to whatever it is that has come up in the sector, and also coordinating or trying to manage the dialogue through the community of practice group. This is our WhatsApp group. And also we've been supported to do the Clean Cooking Week by the Modern Energy Cooking Services team. And also we had the introduction of electric cooking as a discussion during the major event that was last year, and we are looking forward to have this year. And also to just try and cascade clean cooking to the county level so that it is not just at the national level. We've been able to partner with the Africa Center for Technological Studies, KPLC, and of course under the MEX paper program. We've been able to launch four hubs. These are networking hubs at the county level. We have one in Nakuru, we have one in Kisumu, we have one in Makueni, we have one in Kitui. And we are looking forward to launching others. We are also looking forward to launching one in Kakamega County. We are also looking forward to launch one in Kakamega County next month, sorry. So in brief, these are some of the activities that we have been involved in. And we look forward to having collaborations and partnerships with every other stakeholder in the sector that comes, having collaborations in every other stakeholder that is interested in promotion of clean cooking in Kenya. So thank you. That will be the end of my introduction. So I will move next to the program. I would welcome Irene Wanjohi from KPLC to just give us a brief about issues around e-cooking and e-mobility as key pillars of what KPLC does. Karibu sana, Irene.
Good morning. My name is Irene Wanjohi, and I'll just talk a little bit. I have just 5 minutes to cover that topic. I don't have any slides, so you're not going to see any movement of slides because 5 minutes is quite short. In the last 10 years, the Kenya Power base has grown from 19% customers to slightly above 75% customer base. Maybe I should say that Kenya Power is the main distributor of the grid power. We buy electricity from KenGen, from IPPs, from anybody who is selling power to us, who has excess power. We buy power and then we distribute it to customers all over Kenya. And so our customer base right now is slightly above 75% of Kenyans. Unfortunately, out of all our customers, only about 70 out of all of them, 71% of all the customers we serve right now are using less than 30% of units. Only 30 units, not percent, 30 units per month. That means they're on the lower side of, you'd call it, those who talk about economics would say that they would fall on the $1 a day. Yet that is not the truth. Most of us maybe here may even be some of the people who are using about 30 units a day. Why? Because most of us have this perception that electricity is expensive. And so we just use the bulb, maybe we charge our phones, we use the TV, a radio, and maybe just the shower, as little as you can as you try to save electricity. So you end up using 0 to 30% of electricity, then you end up falling in the 71% of Kenyans that are using electricity. So you can imagine, out of 100% of our customers, only about 20 something percent, 29% are using more than 30% of electricity, 30 units of electricity. That's very, very little. And so we in Kenya Power are looking to see how can people start enjoying this great power that they have in their homes. How can they start enjoying what they have right at the switch of a button? Because with innovation, there's a lot of things that you can do. There's e-mobility. At the switch of a button, you can drive your car far and save money instead of using petrol. We're looking at just not even looking at the sustainability side of things, just looking at the comfort of a Kenyan. In your house, you can use e-cooking and save money, save time. So that's what we're looking at right now. And this way, then we can stimulate demand. And in stimulating demand, then our bottom line in Kenya Power can be better. And when our bottom line is better, maybe the cost of power can even be cheaper. So with innovation, there has come pots, for example, or even induction cookers that are actually cheaper than using kerosene, that are cheaper than using charcoal, that are cheaper than even using gas. And e-mobility, that is the topic of today, has shown us that using a motorbike that is powered by electricity, using a car that is powered by electricity, you end up using less money to take yourself, to transport yourself to different places by using electricity, and you end up with a cleaner fuel than you would have used it. And so this is what we have decided to sell or to work with, to stimulate demand so that we can also sell more of what we have. So with the new tariff that has come up, there is an e-mobility tariff. I'm sure Mr. Mugambi, Engineer Mugambi, is going to talk about it, that has come up, that is going to deal with both e-mobility. There's a tariff for e-mobility, and there's a tariff. Unfortunately, it was being called the cleaning cooking tariff, but it's actually the clean cooking tariff. And that is a tariff from 30 to 100 units. That is a little bit better than it would have been if it was 30 to 100 units, as we, Kenya Power, are suggesting it. As after the Ecooking community came up and talked to IPRA, they actually listened to us. They listened to the Ecooking community, the practice, and they came up with that cooking tariff from 30 units to 100 units to encourage Kenyans to use electricity for cooking. In fact, I want to refer to our mission. I'm sure I've already used more than my 5 minutes. Our mission for Kenya Power is powering people for better lives by innovatively securing business sustainability. So we have decided to innovatively secure business sustainability by looking at e-mobility and e-cooking and embracing them as the new children on the block. Let me call them children on the block. E-cooking, e-mobility, and with this, if they're embraced by Kenyans, we know that we would sell more, and Kenyans would enjoy it, not just selling, Kenyans would enjoy their lives better, because they're the way to go, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene, for that brief introduction about KPLC. I will now welcome Beryl from the Modern Energy Cooking Services to give an overview of Kenya's emerging electric cooking sector.
Hello, everyone. I'm sure most of those that are attending today will already have this background on the activities that the MEX program is undertaking to see a growth in the e-cooking sector in Kenya. But just to put this discussion in context today, I'm going to, especially for those that are joining us from the e-mobility sector, so I'll just give a run through of what has been happening within the sector. So the Modern Energy Cooking Services is a program that looks to improve the uptake of modern energy cooking services. And in Kenya, we are focusing on e-cooking. So the program has been doing this through a number of channels, mainly through innovation challenge funds that focus on different areas and try to address emerging issues. For example, cooking within mini grids, cooking on the main grid also, along with other areas. And then there's also building country partnerships, which is one of the activities that we are undertaking together with Kenya Power and CCAK in this case, trying to ensure that there are partnerships within the clean cooking sector and electricity access sector, and then also bringing those two sectors together to create the e-cooking sector from the two of them. Then we also do activities around generating evidence around clean cooking and e-cooking specifically. So this is evidence to do with the cost comparisons for cooking and just all the possibilities that are there for cooking with electricity. So this is a program that is funded by the FCDO and is being implemented internationally, like I said, but in Kenya we are doing cooking with electricity. So yeah, in Kenya we have had a lot of activities, as most of you will know. And this is just a map to show what some of the key highlights of the activities have been. So like you can see, there's something to do with the e-cookbook, which I think was the first big piece of evidence regarding the cost comparison from cooking with different fuels, and that showed that cooking with electricity is the cheapest among all the options that were tested. And then they've also been policy analysis reports, they've been cooking diaries studies, and currently we are, the main activities that we are doing is the strategy development, developing a strategy around e-cooking for Kenya, and implemented jointly with a program that we have dubbed ECAP, which is capacity building and market development for the sector, to see that that it is possible to accelerate the electrification of cooking in Kenya through strengthening the e-cooking sector. This we are doing jointly with Kenya Power and also implemented with other partner organizations. I think Philomena alluded to the fact that they're doing the piece on promoting intersectoral dialogue that falls within the umbrella of this particular program. So in total, there are 12 projects within this umbrella that focus on different aspects, including generating evidence, there's work on stakeholder engagement, there's awareness creation. So there's write-ups on each of these singular pieces of work that are ongoing. So it is hoped that this work is going to be concluded in July. Then for the e-cooking strategy and e-cooking study, this has also been ongoing for a while. So the work around coming up with the e-cooking strategy is predicated by this e-cooking study, which is currently being done by an organization called Nuvoni. So the strategy is I think the goal here is to leverage the strides that have been made within the electrification sector, because as you can see, 75% of Kenyans have access to electricity. But the last study that was done showed that only 1% cook primarily with electricity. Although now there are figures from the Ecooking study that has just been concluded that show that this number is higher because I think of the differences in the way that Ecooking was defined in the ongoing study. So this will be validated soon, but yeah, as you can see, then yeah, so there has been the team doing the Ecooking study has already done household surveys and interviews with key informants, and they've also done they're now working towards getting their findings validated before they can move on to developing the Ecooking strategy. So as part of this, then it is important that it was important for us that the pricing for electricity remained sustainable or fair enough that households would still consider electricity as a viable option for cooking. So I'm able to move this. Wow, it's just doing its thing. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, this. So we met. We participated during the tariff review of the tariffs that were proposed by Kenya Power, and this is where we interacted mostly with the actors in the e-mobility sector, and why we decided to organize this learning event to just see what kind of strategies they applied even ahead of this tariff review process. So the proposed tariff, as you can see here, there was supposed to be a band between a charge for the band of consumers using between 0 and 100, no, and 30 kilowatt hours, and then a different one for those domestic consumers that were consuming over 30 kilowatt hours in a month. So for us, it was important that Kenya Power balance revenue collection on unit sales with the demand stimulation in order to stay profitable. But the proposed tariff was also important to we also wanted it to leverage it to send a strong price signal to consumers in order to keep for them to see e-cooking as viable. So this is what our advocacy in this area was predicated on. So to EPRA, in a meeting that we had along with the actors from the e-mobility sector, and then based on follow-up workshops, on follow-up submissions, then we suggested 4 different options. That's keeping the lifeline tariff as it was initially, or introducing a new consumption band, or offering a special tariff for eligible customers, specifically those that are participating in appliance financing schemes, which is one of the projects that is ongoing under the ECAP project. And then the final proposal to them was to offer a special tariff for smart metered appliances. The last 2, option 3 and 4, would have been a bit complex to implement, given the structures that would need to be enforced to see that monitoring is done in an effective way at this point. So in the end, then EPRA went for the option on introducing a new band. That was option 2, introducing a new consumption band to capture those that consume between 31 kilowatt hours to 100 kilowatt hours in a month. So like I mentioned, we interacted a lot with the representatives from the e-mobility sector over the course of these stakeholder consultations with EPRA. where we saw part of the analysis that formed their case for an e-mobility tariff to EPRA, which is why this session today is important. Yeah, as a learning event and just sharing information between the two sectors. Yeah, so I think I'll end there and yeah, hand back to Philomena.
Thank you, Beryl, for the presentation. I would also just to let you know that if you have a question or a comment, you can please type it in your in the chat box, or you have to make your question very specific, and please let us know who the question is directed to as we proceed on. But we still have an open discussion that where you can still ask your question. So next, we are going to have a representative from KPLC who will talk to us about the overview of Kenya's emerging mobility sector and also its linkage to e-cooking. So I welcome Engineer Mugambi to please pick the next session. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to join the team in Ecooking. Am I being heard clearly?
Yes.
Thank you. Can I be able to scroll on the screen or someone else will? Oh, yeah, I can see the buttons.
Yes, the presentation will be moved on your behalf.
Yes, I'm David Mugambi from Kenya Power. Currently, I run transport services at Kenya Power. I'm also the technical head for the e-mobility team. And our main role at the e-mobility is to catalyze and promote the transition to e-mobility for various reasons. The first is selfish, that as Kenya Power, we are in the power, we are retail company, we retail electricity, we buy and sell electricity. So by uptake of energy, electric energy to power vehicles, and now to do cooking, as Irene mentioned, that we'll be able to push more power through the grid. But on the other hand, we are also looking at cleaning the environment, dealing with the pollution, environmental issues. So that's the other reason why we are in this space. Finally, we are looking at the economy of this country in terms of where do we use our foreign exchange. As the discussion has been there for quite some time, we spend a lot of our, please, I'm just introducing, you seem to have moved very fast. So we are looking at the foreign exchange. As you've heard, fuel is a very, consumes a very big percentage of our foreign exchange. So by bringing in or rather transitioning to use of electricity in both cooking, where we use paraffin and other fossil fuels, gas, which are all foreign, and vehicles, then we can be able to improve the Kenyan economy and sustain the sustainability. As Irene mentioned, on the screen, there is who we are as Kenya Power. We are listed company, the national electric utility in the retail business. We are also, my screen has disappeared. So the vision is, of course, energy solutions, and we are powering people for better lives through innovation, securing business sustainability. So sustainability is not only for Kenya Power. We are looking at the economy, the Kenyan economy as a whole. It is difficult for as an organization to be sustainable in a space where the economy is not doing well. So we are playing our role in this. Let's move on. Our core business basically is we run the network. That's the power distribution network. We purchase bulk electricity, as Irene mentioned. We also are dealing with the dispatch, that system operations, the energy mix. We buy, since we buy this power, this is a role which currently is earmarked for transfer to KETRACO, but discussions are going on. So as of now, KPLC is still doing the dispatch operations. Then finally, we retail. And dispatch is one of the areas which has also generated a lot of discussions, both on the political space, in the business space, because there is a feeling that we are dispatching expensive energy at the expense of cheaper energy. So, but that is something which discussions are going around. And definitely, there are very many other aspects which go into making decisions on what power to bring on board. But currently, more than 90% of the power we dispatch is clean. Let's move on. Then, of course, there is the journey of Kenya Power over the last 100 years, starting with 2 generators in 1922, with a network around the year 2022. We have a vast network, and currently our customers are in the tune of 9.1 million. Above that, because we keep connecting every day. And the connectivity rate over the last 5 years, actually, it has been the fastest on the globe. Currently, as Irene mentioned, 75% of Kenyans have access to electricity, and 100% in all urban areas. But when you get to the rural areas, this percentage goes down to 65. So where the bulk of everybody within the urban setups has electricity at the moment. Over the last couple of years, there was accelerated connection to schools, if we remember, under the laptop project and other initiatives. So power penetration in the country is quite high. Let's move on. Next grid. Currently, we have an installed capacity of 3,321 megawatts as of January this year. And our peak demand, which was recorded in December, was 2,000. That gives us almost 1,200 megawatts gap between our installed capacity and our peak demand. That even at peak hours, we are able to support almost 50% more of the energy demand than we are currently servicing. During off-peak, that is at night when I don't expect people to be cooking, that is between 10 and 5, our peak demand goes off to 1,100, thereby leaving us with over 2,000 megawatts. And that is the space we are looking at to close with e-mobility, because most vehicles, we expect them to be charging at night. Next slide. This is the energy mix for the purposes of us to know whether we are replacing dirty energy with more dirty energy. Because when we displace, for example, the charcoal or displace gas when we are cooking or driving, we should find out what are we replacing it with, because we cannot use diesel, generate electricity to run vehicles. You rather run directly from diesel, because there are even inefficiencies in between the conversion of energy from one form to another. Similarly, in cooking, we don't expect to use gas to generate electricity so that electricity can be used for cooking. So from that slide, you can see that most of our power is clean. and there is very little. The thermal, as of December, we are dispatching around 12. Of course, we have quite a number of off-grid stations and a number of support system which supports the grid. So the 12% is not being dispatched because we have no power. As you have noticed that the difference, the gap between our demand and our installed capacity is quite high. So the thermal is not basically being used because we have no capacity. It's because there are essentials like the off-grid stations where the grid is yet to get. And there are other system operational challenges we have, which forces us to bring in thermal. Taking into account most of our load centers, Nairobi is our biggest load center, but there is no clean generation taking place within Nairobi. It's all carrier, where we have bulk of it, hydros, that is in the, but when it comes to Nairobi, so as we transport this energy from generation to where it is being used, there are parameters which need to be boosted. And that's why, for example, we run some thermal plants in Nairobi, like Thika and Embakasi. Otherwise, as of January, we brought in thermal even went down because we are importing more. Remember, we got just connected to the Ethiopian grid, which has a capacity of providing up to 400 megawatts. Currently, in the short time, we have a contract for up to 200 megawatts. But this is supposed to be scaled up as our demand progresses to almost 400 megawatts. Therefore, the clean energy is still within reach, even without further developing our own stations. Next. This is basically the same screen, but right now we have just put in the case for both e-mobility and e-cooking. We have a very high installed capacity compared to our demand, so we have the energy to power both the e-vehicles and the e-cooking. We are also using mostly clean energy, green energy. Therefore, as we are displacing of dirty energy and bringing in clean energy into our cooking and into our mobility solutions. We have also, as also mentioned by Beryl and Irene, about the special tariffs. We have a special tariff for e-mobility in particular, and also a tariff which is targeting e-cooking, that is between 30 and 100 units. As you heard from Irene, about 70% of the customers are using less than 30 units a month. And from the research which has been done, we need about, most of this to do with about 40 units if they were to cook. Therefore, you will still be below 100 units by introducing cooking in this large segment of the pyramid at the bottom, which is using 30 units. That's a very high figure. Therefore, it can be able actually to boost the utilization of the grid. The other case for this, which I have not captured, is economics of scale. You can imagine running a bus in Nairobi with 5 passengers. What would be the cost of transporting a single passenger? As compared to when the bus is full with 30 passengers and each of us are paying 50 shillings. If 5 passengers were to pay for that, the cost would be much higher. Similar issue is happening on the grid. We have a very extensive grid and very low consumption power wheeling around this grid. Therefore, with 30 units per customer, the cost of delivering that power is very high. Consequently, by improving on how we use our grid, because this is an investment by the entire country, by increasing the amount of energy we are able to dispatch through this grid, then eventually the cost of delivering each unit of electricity is likely to go down. So apart from the special tariffs, higher utilization of electric energy is likely to address the issue of high cost of electricity. Basically because if we sell more, our staff are likely to remain the same. the cost of running the grid will remain the same. The cost of running of the entire infrastructure from generation is likely to remain the same, but we'll be able to dispatch much more energy than we are currently dispatching, thereby benefiting from the economies of scale. Therefore, this would be one of the major contributors. If we have to bring down the cost of power, we must utilize this grid much more efficiently than we are currently doing. So that is one of the fourth item I would want to add as to support e-mobility and the e-cooking. Next, I think the next skills will be slides will batch. Of course, I captured directly issues from EPRA during the Gazette notice, which introduced the units. It was also captured in Bell's presentation. But as you can see that we have been given an opportunity to do more studies, to do more accurate modeling, so that eventually we can see how we can be able to develop a more specific tariff for e-cooking, which we are able to measure and we are able to bill accordingly. Right now, we don't have a system, and I believe that the e-cooking association should be able to help us in modeling this so that we can tell exactly what energy we are using for cooking. Even in homes where, for example, they are consuming more than the 100 units, we should be able, if we are able to measure exactly what in our house goes to cooking, then it will be very easy for us to get a sector-specific tariff. Similarly, the same observation was made for e-mobility, that we monitor the uptake to inform future decisions. So both these spaces are growing in the same direction, and the data is likely to inform what decisions are made as we move forward. Next slide. Now, going back to the case, still back on trying to justify the case for e-mobility and e-cooking, energy utilization is all about efficiency at the costs. How much are we using? Over the years, we have changed our bulbs to energy saving. When we go to charcoal GCOS, when we go to firewood GCOS, everybody is looking at how we can increase the efficiency. Similarly, in this space, both e-mobility and e-cooking, efficiency of the solutions we deploy will determine the success or failure of these initiatives. For example, currently we are looking at, for vehicles, for example, we are looking like the motorcycles are using about 0.1 kilowatts per kilometer. At that shillings, for example, on the general tariff, you can compute what it would cost you to run your motorbike per kilometer. Actually, the vehicles is 0.1 kilowatts. That would translate 30 divided by 0.1 of that, that's about 3 shillings. When you go to the bigger vehicles, like the 25-seater buses, they are using 0.4 kilowatts per kilometer. And that would give us about 12 shillings. When we go to the bigger buses, this goes up to about 0.6. But for motorbikes, we are using about less than a half, 0.05 kilowatts per kilometer. Multiply that by the current cost of electricity around that shilling, that's about 1 shilling and 50 cents. While when you look at the fuel side, the costs are much higher. Just look when you compute with the kilometers you do per liter of energy. So in the e-mobility, just like e-cooking, we must look at efficiency. And that is what will sell this. In e-mobility, we are training, drivers are being trained on how to ensure that they get the maximum out of the energy packed in the battery. So a bus which is doing 200 kilometers, you can make an extra trip or go charging a trip earlier when other people are in the business, depending on your driving habits. So energy efficiency will make a lot of difference on how this space grows. Most machines have become efficient, fridges, TVs. So I would expect the same in the cooking sector for us to be able to drive this transition to electric cooking. Also, accuracy in measurement of energy requirements for particular tasks, because this will enable cost comparison and alternatives. Beryl mentioned that they have done adequate research and the use of electricity came cheapest in cooking, but this can even be more improved if we got better and more energy efficient cooking apparatus solutions. Next slide. I think we have come to the end of the presentation and the comparative analysis between the e-mobility and the e-cooking. And thank you for listening to me. Maybe if there are any questions, I would be able to address them, one or two. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer Mugambi. That is very informative. I hope you will not drop off because we have 4 questions in the chat box from Warren and Myra. And we will discuss these questions after the next presenter. So okay. Yes, and also just to take note of the task you have given to CAK and other conveners around issues to do with data so that we can support the request for the e-mobility tariff. I think this is well noted and we will work around it and see what we can present to KPLC. So our next presenter is Pascal from Africa E-Mobility Alliance. So Pascal is going to talk a bit about just the story of the successful advocacy that has led to the development of the e-mobility tariff. So Pascal, you are welcome. Kindly briefly talk about your organization and then just dive into your presentation. Thank you.
Philomena, let me just briefly interrupt the presentation. Pascal was to make the initial introduction, but since I'm here anyway and I work with Pascal, I'd like to just paint a brief picture about the Alliance and the focus of what Pascal will be speaking about over the next few minutes. Sure. My name is Warren Ondanje from the Africa Mobility Alliance. I work with Pascal and we have recently transitioned and are in the rebranding process from our previous name, which was the IEMDA, Association for Electric Mobility and Development in Africa. So moving on to the next slide, I would just like to indicate a little bit about our main focus areas. As an alliance similar to yourselves over in the clean cooking side, we're actually quite excited to see this conversation happening because there is a lot of knowledge sharing that is supposed to happen between our ecosystem-based organization. We are quite focused on supporting the acceleration of e-mobility across Africa. And this covers Kenya, which is one of the leading countries in terms of both adoption from the industry side, as well as the interest from government and other government-related bodies and parastatals, including Kenya Power, who is in the room. So our initiatives have mainly been focused on supporting the various ecosystem players, such as companies, national associations, investors, even government agencies at various capacity to provide research and policy support. We do this through conducting our own research, conducting industry research and working with e-mobility companies, spanning from policy, energy and infrastructure, as well as financing and business models. And that links to our third pillar, which is on industry engagement. Obviously, when we develop this research and policy material, we're not doing this in isolation. It's actually in collaboration with quite a number of partners. So we conduct numerous industry engagements, running from industry and investor working groups all the way to running bigger events and even participating in knowledge sharing activities such as this one. So we welcome the idea of collaborating and sharing the story around how we got to the e-mobility tariff. I'll just like to give a brief background that Kenya, being one of the leading countries on the continent around the implementation of e-mobility, back in 2020, there was the National Energy Conservation and Energy Efficiency and Conservation Strategy, which was developed under the Ministry of Energy. And one of the components of enabling clean transport was actually a commitment to transition 5%, at least 5% of the existing vehicle fleet to become electric by 2025. So that document was put out in 2020 with a 5-year forecast. We are right now in 2023, we only have 2 years to go. And it's a good reflection point for us to start really analyzing on what other areas of support, both private sector, public sector, and other stakeholders can play in accelerating us towards this milestone. 5% electrification, as you will see in the presentation, represents quite a large number of vehicles. Right now, our penetration of electric vehicles is less than 1%, which is pretty alarming. But initiatives like what Kenya Power is doing in promoting and actually recognizing the space is one of the trigger points that is going to play an important role. There are other factors, including fiscal and non-fiscal policies that need to be put in place. And I'm sure we can speak in another forum, mainly on the transport side and what's being done on that. So without further ado, I'll welcome Pascal to continue the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, thanks a lot, Warren, for the introduction. And yeah, so I'm going to highlight on, so first I'll start giving you an overview about the Kenya e-mobility. So mainly, we have been working with, apart from Kenya, we have also been working on with different mobility companies across Africa, as Warren has mentioned. And something which we found actually interesting is that we recently, last year in December, we did studies and we created company profiles for different companies across Africa. And something interesting about Kenya is that Kenya is not only leading in terms of having the largest number of mobility companies, but also in terms of revenue, or I mean like in terms of money which has been raised. As you can see, Kenya has more than 35 companies which are currently running and operating either in importing or assembly or battery swapping. And they have raised more than 50 million. And this is, we are only talking about the amount of money which has been disclosed. Yeah. And the number of companies or electric vehicles, it's around 1,350. And this is according to data in February. And as you already know, there is a lot which has been happening. So for example, from February to currently, the number of e-buses has increased from 2 to 18, because now we have, you know, at least 18 electric buses, 1 from Rome, 7 from Basigo. And so this is a small, you know, like an overview of the government projection or like desire to change electric vehicles. You know, like convert the existing fleet of vehicles to electric, which was put in motion in 2020. And they are planning to, you know, like change it to 5%, as you can see. So the current fleet, somehow there is a good indication in terms of two-wheelers, because out of the 1,350 electric vehicles which I told you before. The majority of them are two-wheelers actually, and then three-wheelers and four-wheelers. In terms of buses, there is still a very long way to go mainly because there are fewer players in terms of buses, and also electric buses are more expensive, so they are more capital intensive. So not so many companies are trying to introduce electric buses. So we still have a long way to go to reach that 5% goal. So in terms of electricity consumption, so the main reason why we are bringing this up is to actually see, because we are mainly, we may just be talking about, introducing electric vehicles or like cooking, but we do not know how much these electric vehicles or cookers are going to consume on the grid. So from the analysis which we ran, so for example, in 2022, considering the number of vehicles which were on the road, there is actually like a very large number of consumed units from these vehicles, which means that our grid, the Kenyan grid, is still able to to service these electric vehicles. And as you can see, it was only 0.04% of the total energy consumed, and that raised around 54.5 million Kenyan shillings in terms of revenue. Of course, this number is not absolute because it changes depending on the tariff of the place where that vehicle was charged. If it was charged at home, or it was charged using a small commercial tariff. So if the Kenyan government manages to hit the 5% goal by 2025, the grid consumption is going to increase from 0.4% to 6.3% of the total electricity consumption, which again, it's still something which the grid will be able to support. And as you have seen, even during the peak, with the current stats with even during the peak hours, there is still excess of electricity. So even this 6.3% extra is still not going to even drain the excess electricity which will be existing on the grid. But something interesting about this graph here is that most of this electricity will be consumed by buses, and mainly because buses actually takes a lot of electricity when charging them, and also four-wheelers, even though the two-wheelers will be the majority of the electric vehicles when that transition happens. So yeah, let's talk about the e-mobility tariff. So something good is that there is also an e-cooking tariff, but I still think it may be nice to walk you through about the process, like what actually happened before the e-mobility tariff was introduced in Kenya. So it started with a lot of series of events, and one of them was the government goal in 2020 to transition the fleet to electric vehicle, and that actually stimulated a lot of conversations among players such as the mobility companies, which already existed in the country by then, and also development agencies like UNEP. And these companies, because of the high starting price of the vehicles, they are trying to somehow find some ways of even making the operation of the vehicles lower. So they were having individual conversations with the Kenya Power. And when you have every company trying to approach authorities and asking for favors, then that becomes sort of disorganized and not easy to manage. Yeah. So, and again, also UNEP had a pilot study of 99 electric motorcycles, which were given to partners like Kenya Power, Power Hive in Kisumu County. And these were actually useful, especially for Kenya Power, because they were then able to see how good, or how cheap it is operating an electric vehicle. And I think that's why also, I'm not sure, but I think that's probably one of the reasons why they were also like very advocating on, you know, having a tariff which will favor transition into electric vehicles, because themselves already had that experience of running an electric vehicle and seeing how cheap it is in terms of operation compared to running an ICE vehicle. Yeah, so during the e-mobility tariff, as you know, Kenya Power proposed a new e-mobility tariff to EPRA in February. And when that was proposed, it was published, and AFEMA mobilized industry players. We sent out a survey to them, and we also had virtual meetings. And the main reason we did all those is because we wanted to know if the proposed tariff was something which met the expectations of the players, and mainly because they already started engaging with Kenya Power even before the tariff itself was proposed. And also we wanted to know the demand, which is something interesting from Ecooking as well. Like you did studies to actually like see on average how much do these people consume. So if you give them this band of units which they expected to use in a month, is it going to meet their requirement? That's really what we wanted to know. We also were curious to know about their charging habits and projections, like how many vehicles are they expecting to either manufacture or import in the next 5 years or 2 years. And of course, we also mobilized them. We created a proposal together, which we then shared with Kenya Power and EPRA. And finally, EPRA released or like approved the new tariff, which, as you can see here. So previously, most of the companies who we worked with on the proposal were being charged on the small commercial tariff, which was 10 bulbs. And also, but Kenya Power was proposing 17 for the mobility, and us from the study which we did, we were proposing 12. And another thing which we actually like very happy about is that we proposed a time of use tariff, which was not included in the Kenya Power initial proposal. Yeah, so yeah, so they approved the tariff, where, as you can see. And of course, these numbers without including taxes. So we created a model in order to do simulations to see how much these end users are going to be charged, and these are rough estimates of the money which we think the end users will be paying. And the tariff is already in place, so I think people from Kenya Power can actually confirm like if these numbers are right or not. Yeah, so this is like a breakdown of the 16 bulb tariff, which goes to 32. As you can see, the majority of it, this is like the charge itself. And these are the levies or taxes which comes with it, fuel cost, VAT, and other levies. Yeah, so this is just the breakdown. Yeah, so this is also something the speaker from Kenya Power was trying to, try to demonstrate to everybody, that it's actually cheaper operating or like running an EV. As you can see with the new tariff, it's very very convenient, because if you charge during off-peak, let's take an example of a motorcycle, you're going to pay around 79 to 120 compared to 662 of fuel, which is like super cheap. And these calculations were done with some estimations. So for example, like the majority of the industry players said their vehicles consume around 4 kWh for 100 kilometers. And we then, of course, compared with the average energy consumption or like fuel consumption of an average motorcycle. Again, it's also like very cheap for four-wheelers, the same for a bus. Okay, so what is the intersection between mobility and e-cooking? So I'm rushing because I know we are running out of time as well. So one thing which we think may be interesting to discuss, or as an intersection between mobility and e-cooking, it's in terms of green logistics. So most of the mobility players also deal with logistics. So because the main reason of advocating for e-cooking or e-mobility is I mean, for the end user, it may be making their life cheaper in terms of lowering operational cost, but on a national level, it's more of having sustainable, either sustainable cooking or sustainable transport. So it may be something interesting also integrating, you know, like green logistics. So for example, partnering with mobility companies to deliver, you know, like cooker or basic cooking. And also another thing, it's in terms of considering of second life applications of the batteries. So one way this can be used is these batteries which are used in electric vehicles. Usually, you know, electric vehicles require very like high-end batteries. So once they get exhausted by the electric vehicles, these batteries can be used as energy storage. And the good thing is that there are already a couple of companies in Kenya, like WeCenter, who actually deal with repurposing of batteries so that they can be used as a power bank at homes. And this, you know, it may be one way of also like using them for cookers. And another intersection is research and policy, as Warren has already mentioned, is we do have experience working in this. And one thing which we actually did learn a lot is involving the players, because they have different experiences, and, you know, put everything together and then come up with something which demonstrate to the authorities or the government that this is good because of 1, 2, 3, 4, and that can actually, you know, like in terms of collaborating, as we did when we were proposing the mobility tariff between Ecooking Association and the Mobility Alliance and Association in Kenya. Yeah, that's the end. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Pascal. This is very good and very informative. We will surely try to use these experiences to apply to the clean cooking, e-cooking sector in Kenya. So I'd just like to remind us all that there is a registration link in the inbox, in the chat box. Kindly register so that you can also be able to get your details and also add you to our database so that you can receiving any information about electric cooking. So our next session is an open discussion where the Q&A will be answered, especially by the two panelists that just presented. And I would welcome my colleague Simon to carry on with this session. Thank you.
Thanks, Philomena, for that, and thank you all for participating. Please confirm if I'm audible enough.
Yes, Simon, you can hear you.
Thank you. As Philomena mentioned, my name is Simon Kirago, in charge of programs at CCAK, and I think this has been a very exciting session. As we go right into it, I can see, David, your hand is up, and was going straight to you because some of the questions started through your presentation. So, David, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to put something into perspective about the capacity of our grid. Currently, with 3,200 megawatts installed capacity, the grid can comfortably deliver 28,000 gigawatt hours of energy in a year. Our current dispatch is about 9,000. That means we are actually utilizing basically less than 40% of the available capacity in the grid. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I was actually going to ask, as we go to the questions on the chat box, which was started, I think the first question was by Myra, but as you mentioned, we have a very big installed capacity. My question goes, why do we then import power?
Currently, as I mentioned, that there are quite a number of dynamics within our power mix. One, like the contract we have with Ethiopia is looking into the future. We always need spinning reserve within our capacity. We don't use 100%. So at any one given time, we try to ensure that a minimum of 30% available capacity during peak. But peak demand does not look at the entire demand across the day. That looks at 1 hour, the most when people are home cooking and doing other things. So if we are to do, and that's what we are looking at the moment in terms of evening the curve, so that this capacity is used out almost evenly throughout the day, as opposed to 2 hours, then some of the machines have to be put off until the following day. So the imports are there to support growth, especially the Ethiopia. The Ugandan import has been there to support our system voltages in Western Kenya. We actually don't import much from Uganda. Currently, even their capacity is not enough, but the interconnection helps our network in terms of stability. The Ethiopia is looking at our growth strategy, and it is cheaper for us to place a contract for power importation than to build our own, most probably a more expensive. That actually moves our cost from capital, CapEx, to OpEx. That is operational cost because you'll buy and sell. Basically, it's saving the economy some cost of investing in power. Also, the interconnectivity has something to do with the East African power pool. We are looking at exporting this power through our grid to Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania, and if possible, to eventually to South Africa, where their current power crisis, they are doing load shedding almost 40% of the time across the industry. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Also, I would start off with a question by Myra. How will the clean cooking tariff be implemented? Will there be a separate billing? I see there is a comment, but you can still expound on that. Is it a separate billing or how will it be implemented?
Basically, the e-cooking tariff doesn't have a separate. It is actually targeting a transition for the 70% of the Kenyan population who are using 30 units a month. They are the ones we are trying to give a lifeline to be able to use e-cooking until they reach 200, because the other population is using more than 200, more than 100 units, so they are not a target of that tariff. So this tariff is targeting people in the category of 30 to 100 units. And as you heard from Irene, 30%, 70% of our customers are basically below 30 units. So it's targeting a certain segment of the customers. It's not a separate tariff, but it is practically looking at the low-income households. And as I mentioned, and as you can see from the Kenya Gazette from April, is that we need to collect data and find a way of getting smart equipment so that we can see how we can be able to meter e-cooking separately. At the moment, it's being metered alongside all the other applications in the households.
All right, so that means if people are using like the instant showers and they fall in within the bracket, so there's no way of disaggregating that. So all of them will be under that band.
Yes, fortunately, you will not be using an instant shower and you fall below that units. 40. It is not, it's very unlikely. An instant shower basically is about 2,000 kilowatts. So if you share for 30 minutes, that's already 0.5 units. So if you are 2-3 people in the morning, you will most probably use a unit or two. So you can see that it is very difficult for someone with an instant heater to be within that bracket of below 100. Difficult, unless you are alone in the house.
Okay, then also she had asked, is the 75% connectivity disaggregated?
75, as I mentioned, I am not getting the question clearly because that word doesn't seem to be in my vocabulary at the moment. This.
Maybe I can help. Maybe I can help.
Yes.
Is the 70% only grid connections? 75%, is it only grid connections?
No, it is always both on the grid and the off-grid. Our off-grid, practically, we treat them like they're on the grid. It's a very small percentage of customers, but they cover a wide area, especially in the northern parts of the country where the grid is yet to be there. It's not a significant population in terms of numbers, but it, in terms of the fuel and the power delivery, we consider them just like any other customer on the grid.
Is it possible to get this disaggregated data?
Yes, very, we can get that data that they provide if it's required.
Okay.
Thank you, Dan. I think I had seen Andrew's hand up.
Yes, thank you. I had a question about I see it often quoted about the installed capacity, which we talk about installed capacity of 3,200 megawatts, but with the hydros and the drought situation, what is the actual available capacity? I think I heard from somebody that it's 2,300, but the study that was done showed that it's around, we're estimating it is around 2,500 that's available. So if that is the case, then there isn't a reserve margin that we think we have. So just needed to get clarification on the estimates of the power generation per year of 29,000 or 29 terawatt hours, if that includes hydro, because that hydro is not there.
Currently,
thank you, Amadi, and probably Dan, you can also answer. I think there was also a question, but just highlighting by Warren. So I think it's the same. Please carry on.
Currently, the available capacity an average is 2,700 to 2,800. When we were talking about the 2,200 to 2,300, we are not brought in the 400 currently we look at as installed. That is the line from Ethiopia. So currently we are 2,800.
Okay, thank you for that.
As I also mentioned, we are looking, those figures are at peak. That's 1 hour in a day. Throughout the rest of the day, as I mentioned, only barely 40% of the capacity is in use. For example, if we go to two-wheelers, they will be charging throughout the day and night. We would expect them to be charging throughout. So we expect that not to hit our peak as much as it did. For the buses, we are looking at closing the gap between 1,100 and 2,800. That's quite a high capacity. So basically, notwithstanding the peak statistics, we have a very high capacity within the rest of the day. It's practically like a bus which carries people in the morning, and throughout the rest of the day, it is packed waiting for the evening peak.
Yes, I think the opportunity there also for those in e-mobility, even considering e-cooking, maybe perhaps is to be able to completely avoid that peak hour. And then now you can spread the charging, because it is not critical that you charge in that particular time. You can charge after the time of use, and I'm sure that was discussed quite elaborately. I think another barrier that we still need to address, and I know it is a hot topic, is the tariff. And I think the structure given by EPRA and the targets to reduce on the tariff, I think is something that the private sector would really want to support Kenya Power in this. Thank you.
Thank you. Basically, even before we close, as I mentioned, with the grid, the whole infrastructure within the energy sector, with a utilization factor of 40%, you expect those costs to be high. And that's why I'm raising the issue of the peak. Most of this cost is going to supporting the peak demand. So if this can be even, by the time you even hit 50%, 60%, automatically the rates, the power tariffs can be negotiated downwards because infrastructure will be the same. The power stations are the same. They are spinning around the clock as opposed to spinning 3 hours a day. In Olkaria, we burnt steam throughout the night. And that is energy being drawn away to the atmosphere. So all this is likely to contribute towards the tariff reduction. Thank you.
Thank you. There's another question by Warren. How far is Kenya Power rolling out the e-mobility tariff?
That question doesn't, I'm not able to get exactly, but in terms of rollout, we have already changed all our systems. We are ready for this tariff. And anybody we are metering now, we are metering them who is on e-mobility. We are metering the people installing chargers right now. And those already who are the chargers, all they need to do is to come into any of our offices and we'll be able to transition them to e-mobility tariff.
So my clarification to that, and thank you for that, engineer. I just wanted to understand for the existing companies, whether they will have a separate meter specifically for charging their vehicles, or in case they happen to be, let's say, in a warehouse which has other office operations, how would that be disaggregated? Or does that mean they only have to apply for the meter specifically for the charger or the charging point?
Yes, basically our discussions, both in-house, is that e-mobility tariff will only apply to charging activities. So if we are installing a charger, then it must have a separate circuit, which we are able to meter. There are those people who are running like the modules, for like the people doing swapping in containers, where the percentage of say lighting in terms of that container is purely e-mobility. That one will be put on an e-mobility tariff. But if you are within a warehouse where there are other things, where the main consumption is not e-mobility, then you will have to separate your circuit and ensure that it's metered. We'll have to do inspection before we are able to transition to e-mobility.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mugambi, for that. I think your last question is from Dorothy, who is asking, transport is very crucial for distribution of cooking products for SMEs. How is KPLC addressing this throughout the country of reduced cost and support entrepreneurs? And she further follows up with a question on, is it possible to convert a vehicle from normal fuel to e-mobility? So that's the last question to you.
The second question, the second part of the question is very clear. The first one, I would like some clarity. On the second one, yes, it is possible to transition a vehicle from ICE or internal combustion to e-mobility, but it's an expensive exercise. One of the farms, pioneer farms in e-mobility in the country, that is Rome, they started with transitioning Land Cruisers. They were also transitioning the bodas. Those are, they could transition boxers, the common bodas to electric. But what should be realized is issues, as I mentioned, is that e-mobility is about energy efficiency. So when you are preparing a vehicle for e-mobility, even the structure, the structural strength, the weight, all these are look at the efficiencies. So a converted vehicle will not be as efficient as a vehicle which is originally designed for e-mobility. So it is an expensive exercise, and that's why eventually even we transitioned to actually developing two-wheelers and the four-wheelers which are coming in the market specifically as originally electric, as opposed to converting an existing internal combustion engine. The first part of the question, I would like some clarity. In terms of transport, I'm not very sure what that question is about.
Dorothy, would you mind elaborating what you meant?
Thank you so much, Simon, and thanks to the engineer for the presentation and for answering our questions. Now, I am looking at the topic of discussion today, e-cooking and e-mobility. I'm speaking from an entrepreneur's point. The cost of transport in distributing the cooking appliances is very high when you're looking at the vehicles that are using petrol. Yeah, because that is most of, that is the common fuel for most of the vehicles so far. It is quite high. So how is, I've also got to know now that there's someone who is also in charge of e-mobility. Maybe they can also help. How can we, can you then help SMEs to reduce their costs of transporting these clean cooking products into the field by developing the e-mobility that would then help in the cooking sector? I don't know whether I've explained myself well.
Yes, thank you very much. Maybe I want to look at the various sectors in the value chain. And I would say that the e-mobility sector is practically very young in terms of very recent. So basically the products we are looking at going forward is basically what products do we have? And currently, some years back, we were not talking about electric mobility. It was a preserve of very few. But over time, research has made this now viable. At the moment, the two-wheelers are practically viable. The buses, the mass transport is also viable. Today, I've just received a call from one of the farms which has brought in a small truck, that is the 3-ton, the medium truck, which is electric, and they wanted us to have a look at it. So we are mobilizing the players in different sectors to look for viable products which are able to transition to electric and become commercially viable, because the transition has also a commercial aspect. So it's not just transition. So products will come depending on how viable they are. At the moment, two-wheelers, mass transport within towns, intercity is likely to go into electric trains. There is no country in the world which does intercity with electric buses unless they are able. You require enormous amount of energy to run a bus between intercities. Similarly, but for the distribution is likely to take the e-mobility solution. That is the city distribution. If you are able to transport your gas, for example, or any product to Nakuru, then you can be able to use an electric last mile. I'm looking at the last mile per se, but transportation intercity will take a bit of long. And maybe Warren and the team from IAMDA can be able to weigh on this. But the last mile, like the tuk-tuks used to distribute gas in towns, those are ripe for transition to e-mobility. As an institution ourselves, Ours is to help develop the infrastructure, develop the energy delivery system so that wherever you put up a charger or wherever you have an electric vehicle, you're able to get reliable energy at that point. That is our core mandate in this space at the moment.
Just to add a note, basically on the intersection between e-mobility and e-cooking, as Pascal had already indicated, e-mobility can offer a lower cost option for either distribution or daily operation of any e-cooking services. They can be e-cooking, they might not be e-cooking, but they can still be clean fuel. So if you're distributing your pellets, if you have a set of cookers or gas that you want to distribute, it comes down to looking at how heavily do you rely on the fleet of either motorbikes or three-wheelers. And then it's important to basically do some modeling to look at do your running costs actually validate investment into an e-vehicle? Because one of the challenges of the e-mobility transition has always been the high initial purchase price. So solutions around this could be getting in touch with financing companies that also support the financing of electric motorcycles or electric three-wheelers. We know of a few, including Watu Credit or M-Kopa or Mogo, who also do that financing. Option 2 would also be considering to just rent or procure those services on needs basis from electric mobility companies, up until the point where it makes more sense to rightfully invest in purchasing the said vehicles and using them for the operations. As you've seen, the cost of running the e-vehicle is significantly lower than an equivalent fossil fuel driven vehicle, be it a two-wheeler, three-wheeler. And that's where the modeling needs to be done, the scenario cases, both in urban and rural areas, to see whether the cost is actually valid. It also goes with identifying the partner, the e-mobility company within the locality you want to have these operations. So if it's in an urban area or in a rural area, for purposes of either accessing the charging or swapping networks, and also receiving support in terms of maintenance and any repair works that need to be done on the vehicle as you're using it. I hope that has also brought some light to it.
Thanks, Warren, for that addition. I think that makes the question fully answered, because we have been able to allude to more opportunities. I think the last question on the chat goes to Pascal. So within the e-cooking sector, we have platforms that promote engagement within the industry. For example, community of practice on WhatsApp group. So we also use it to discuss emerging issues within the sector and share information. So the question goes to your part: do similar platforms exist for the mobility sector, and what kind of forums have proven effective for coordination?
Okay, yeah, thanks for the question. So actually we do have different ways of engaging with stakeholders, and one of them is through WhatsApp, which we actually did find it very convenient as one way of quickly sharing information, or if there is an upcoming event. And another approach which we use is LinkedIn, which has good followers for us. We for the technical brief for the mobility tariff, we did host a LinkedIn event. And I have also shared the summary of the event with you on the chat. You can see it, which we did find it very useful, because we got insight on implementation of a mobility tariff from other countries like Rwanda and India. And currently, we also do have, we are organizing on working groups. So working groups are meant to be events of bringing together different stakeholders, specifically mobility companies and investors who are interested in mobility across the continent, as one way of discussing challenges and opportunities, and see if there are any, like way of collaborating between these companies, and as well as, like connecting them with investment opportunities or investors. Yeah, so in summary, we actually do have, like different approaches of reaching out to stakeholders and making them collaborate with us. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Pascal, for that. So I'm looking from the chat side, there are no questions. If anybody has something, an additional input or a question, you could raise your hand, and because I know we have some few minutes over time. So I'll give this floor to anybody who would be is feeling to, like he has a burning question or an additional input. Now's the time.
I'll just have a small addition, and this is not really a question, but also a recognition of the initiatives that you're putting together from as a Clean Cooking Alliance community. Our interest, and I think it's very important to, at this stage, highlight the importance of collaboration between different stakeholders in the space. Knowledge sharing is going to play an important part, especially as we move forward. And you see there's such interactions like the tariff brings us together. We need to share experiences on how the policy side is going, and the advocacy and the data and evidence building process actually works, so that we create a win-win scenario for the end consumers, as well as presenting something that the government and other stakeholders find is contributing towards national economic growth. I also think it's important to further the conversation, probably in terms of research and development. For instance, the question that had been raised around how is the intersection between e-mobility and e-cooking. So probably putting together any demonstration pilots to just understand for companies that have significant operations that require different mobility options, we can try and scope out some demonstration to just show the viability of this transition between e-cooking and e-mobility. I also believe the other area of intersection is going to be especially on energy storage, because electric vehicles at the end of their lifespan will be bringing a huge discharge of batteries that are no longer fit for fast life application in the automotive space. The reason is in the automotive space, there's quite a high power demand on these batteries as they are accelerating and carrying a lot of load. When they come to their end of fast life, there's a second life opportunity here. And this could be in especially battery storage for various purposes. It can be stationary storage for homes and commercial facilities. It might also be to power devices such as lighting equipment. It can be small pumps. It can also be towards energy storage for e-cooking. So there's an option here, or an opportunity. As more vehicles are being transitioned to become electric, there's also a potential burden and opportunity for end-of-life applications. And the sooner there can be collaborations or framework for repurposing vehicles, batteries that come out of the first application, it can create quite a good business opportunity, as well as a sustainability and resilience perspective for these batteries to not be dumped, but go on to these applications that will provide energy securities to more communities. And it might potentially, even extend towards energy supply back into the grid. So these are other opportunities that I believe would be worth discussing further to see whether this can contribute towards a stakeholder or a stakeholder engagement or some research or pilots. It's just general comments around what other next steps can be realized from this interaction.
Thanks, Warren, for that, and I totally agree with those potential areas of synergies that you've been able to outline. And as Beryl had mentioned in our presentation, there's an ongoing work that is being inputted into the e-cooking study. Perhaps some of these things would be able to be covered before we do the validation. That's something probably Beryl can be able to share with you so that we also look into that. And I also, as you mentioned, those areas, I think one of the other areas we need also to relook into is issues to do with waste management, given the issues of the batteries. Perhaps that's a conversation in another level. But thanks for that and for what you have been able to share. I can see Nyongesa, your hand is up.
Oh, yes, my name is Leonard Nyongesa. There is a question that was raised by Beryl. I'm not quite sure whether it has been responded to. That, for e-cooking, we have online interaction platforms. For example, we have the e-cooking community of practice that comprises of people, from different stakeholder, agencies, starting from entrepreneurs, those ones interested in providing financing, associations, people from the government departments, and there is quite a very interesting interaction, which is quite instant, that you don't need to ask someone a contact to link you to someone. Almost everybody is there. Do we have a similar platform in the e-mobility sector?
I think, Nyongesa, I think that question was answered by Pascal, but probably if there is, I don't know if Pascal, you mind giving, reminding him what you had shared?
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll just give him a brief. So we actually do have WhatsApp groups for every country, where we share updates if there is a country-specific event or other events where, like are relevant to them. And apart from that, also we do occasional events on LinkedIn as video or like audio meetings. And in addition, we are also planning to do working groups for companies and investors. Regarding the platform of where you can instantly connect with people, for now it's only WhatsApp. That's where you'll be able to get phone numbers and contacts of all the players. But we do have plans, of course, of having our own platform where companies will be sharing data and get aggregated data so that they'll be able to see what is happening where and how they can use it for for their own improvement or improving their business. And that will only be member only access platform.
Yeah, how do you onboard the WhatsApp group? Like you have you share the link or somewhere, or you receive contact?
Yeah, sure. I think we'll do that in the chat. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Pascal. Anybody who has a question before we move to the next session? If not, I think that thank you very much for those insights you have been able to provide. Thank you, David. Thank you, Pascal, and your team from the Africa E-Mobility Alliance. Thanks for sharing those inputs. And I think those are very highly regarded as conversations that can be able to move the nexus issues about e-cooking and e-mobility going further. So once again, much appreciation from our team. So I would like to give this session back to our closing person, Ms. Irene, to give our closing remarks.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, everybody, for attending. I think what has come out very clearly here is that indeed, Kenya is a hotbed of innovation. I think what we now need to become is a hotbed of adaptation. And already I can see we are on our way there. If we are the fastest growing in adapting e-mobility, as I think Pascal or Warren said, I think in Africa, I don't know where we are fastest in where. don't know whether it's in Africa or is it in East Africa, but I heard as it said that we are among the fastest growing in that area. In Africa, that's
Yes.
amazing. It's amazing because I rarely see an electric car, but it's amazing. The other thing, just noting that we are supposed to grow 5% to transit, 5% vehicles to e-mobility. It sounds like a small number, but just thinking that 5% vehicles are supposed to be electric by 2026, that's a very, very high number. And it's something that we as Kenya Power would be very excited about, because for us, it of course ensures that we're selling electricity. It also ensures that there's something we're doing. We're making a difference in the country, which is a real joy to us. The other thing that we noticed during the EPRA negotiation time is that the e-mobility sector is very, very organized, while because of the kind of noise they were making, they really made a lot of noise. And what we noticed is that it's very easy for you to collect your data, basically because everybody has to be registered. But in the e-cooking sector, it's a bit harder for us to get data. And so we are trying to get ourselves organized, the e-cooking sector organized, so that we can be able to get data, to get to know how many people are actually using electricity to cook, because you can't just walk into people's home to know how many people are using electricity to cook. So we'll need to get our suppliers together to get to know how much they're selling and all that, and to finish with the e-cooking strategy, to be able to know and how far are we in making everybody cook with electricity, because by 2028 we are supposed to be, Kenya is supposed to be cooking with a clean fuel 100%, according to what we have declared to the rest of the world. And so we hope that we are on our way there. The other thing to note to the e-mobility people and everybody else here is that Basigo and the others have promised us that they're going to be charging their vehicles at night. They actually came here and most of them are charging their vehicles at night. I don't know how possible it is for the rest of us to wake up at night to cook our githeri at night so that we can use the energy off peak. But this has been a very, very exciting talk. It's very exciting to know that there's actually a set figure, 5% by 2026, and by 2028, we're supposed to be 100% clean cooking. So thank you very much for everybody who has come. Thank you very much for listening and staying through. Thank you very much, Engineer Mugambi, for the talk that you've given us and all the answers that you've answered and the enlightening education that you've given us. We appreciate you, Philomena, for organizing this. Thank you. Over to you, Philomena or Simon.
Thank you. Thank you, Irene. Thank you, everyone, for participation. Looking forward to having these conversations more in the sector. Thank you. You feel free to drop off.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.